About Chuck D, but Chuck D is clear. The sonic differences of the two eras are it's easy. It is a man's voice. Is an authoritative voice, like a father voice. Okay, and that is out the range of our era. Okay, I believe that this era you don't have authoritative voices. You have popular voices, but Drake or even Kendrick, Cole, none of these guys have an authority in their voice. They're popular. You know, it's almost where you have other voices, and I don't give a fuck who it is. Big Daddy Kane has an authoritative voice. Rakim has an authority in his voice. Grand Poobah has an authority in his voice. That's just how I see it. And Chuck D is from that generation where you had a certain authority in your voice. Okay. And that's why Chuck D, his material is specific because it's on a political thing. It is all pro-black. There's a self-conscious there where versus everybody rhyme about clubbing.
Yeah.
You know, anybody can rhyme about, holding a bag. Everybody can rhyme about, exclusive Gucci store wear. But how many people gonna talk about Black history or Black current events? You know.
Well, I don't care how far or what number he makes in the top 100. I do believe he fits in the top 100, but my personal would be at the lower side. If for me on the lower side, because like I said, the few rappers that I named, he doesn't have that ability of a Nas or whoever. Like I said,
Yeah, but who writes? Like I said, so a lot of times people like to do this. Who writes better protest songs? Chuck D has the most powerful protest song. So as much as we treasure Nas, and as much as we treasure a lot of guys, but there's nobody who writes better protest songs.
I don't know, Paris.
Paris does make great protest songs.
Same ilk though.
Yeah. Yeah, Paris does make great protest songs. I think Brother Jay kind of is he another guy with a very authoritative voice, Brother Jay X Clan. So you have those real distinctive voices, fatherly like men voices, versus to me more of not kids, but they're certainly young men, but there's no Brother Jay at the top of his career was the same age, I'm sure, as J. Cole and them was.
So, I don't know, man. It's just that, but again, as great as we hold them, we just don't hear, even in our own age group, we don't hear people throw them names out there unless they're having a discussion like this.
Because Chuck D wasn't that type of rhymer. Like I said, Chuck D was more on a conscious lyric, more on a telling about Black stories and stuff like that. That's what you got from Chuck. So you won't think about him as being an MC, because Chuck wasn't, to me, Chuck is not an MC. Chuck to me is more of somebody, like he always plays those speeches from Farrakhan and stuff like that. He's just somebody that's talking to you, that's bringing a story to you and letting you know this is how we should be getting down, or this is what we should do or shouldn't be doing. But nobody's thinking about him when you're thinking about a nigga just spitting lyrics. You ain't thinking Black Thought when you're thinking about.
But you
Chuck
gotta remember Chuck's history. Rick Rubin pursued him for 2 years. Chuck never wanted to rhyme anyway. He never wanted to MC.
He was radio.
You know what I'm saying? He was a radio DJ guy, Spectrum City. He did not want to do that. And the funniest thing about him is that Chuck D, as a guy, not in his teens, Chuck was in his late 20s, approaching 30.
Right.
When he got his record deal. Right. So he's a man. There's a whole different perspective,
right.
Not the battle MC.
Right. Well, bottom line is Chuck D and rappers of that ilk need to be more addressed more. And this is the problem for me with lists, because people just, there should be there could be lists, but there needs to be categories because the way it is now, what is hip hop? 50 years old, 45 years old, whatever. It's so it's still the youngest genre, but it's so it is flipped so many times that you have people within those flips that have their tops that will not compare to something that's after that. You know what I'm saying? Uh Somebody who's open minded in hip hop, we're gonna understand that there are young cats now that are making hip hop that is just like the hip hop that we fell in love with, and we seek them out. But typically, people who are into the Ja Rule era, so to speak, they probably they might because it's different, but they probably aren't checking for Lil Uzi Vert. You see what I'm saying? So it's hard to just put everybody in the dish and just pick top five and shit because it'll never work. It'll never be an agreement.
Well, I believe that hip hop and largely it's there's a gift and a curse. And I mean hip hop and I mean even commercial rap music is the only genre that allows each generation to erase the previous generation
Mm,
and crown themselves king.
right.
That
And
that happens all the
and
time.
that happened no, but I'm saying but this is the only form of music that allows you to do that. I mean there's not a real jazz musician who would say Louis Armstrong is bullshit. He wouldn't even
Better
come out.
not.
There's not a rock musician who would say, well, Jimmy was overrated. Are you fucking kidding me? They would never do that. But hip hop and rap and that even from our era, because you got to remember, it's the Kumo D's knocking out the Busy Bees, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and then LL's turn to fucking just run all over Kumo D and shit, etc., etc., etc.